Time now to speak to the Labour Party about this morning's stories. Deputy National Campaign Co-ordinator Ellie Reeves is here with me. Very good morning to you. Thanks for coming in. First of all, we've heard that Israel has announced that it's opening up new humanitarian routes to get more aid into Gaza. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm pleased that they're doing that. Aid needs to be ramped up. The loss of life in Gaza has been intolerable. 32,000 people killed, and there are still hostages in Gaza. So the aid getting in is good. I hope that they fulfil that. But actually what we need is an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
What more action should the UK take? Should the UK stop arms sales to Israel?
I've got really serious concerns about arms sales to Israel. That's why we have repeatedly called for the government to publish the legal advice that it's received on this. If the legal advice says that there is a clear risk that UK arms are being used to commit or facilitate breaches of international humanitarian law, then arms sales should stop immediately. But the government have had this advice for close to a month now and haven't published it. If the advice does say that, there are real questions about why they haven't already acted.
You're calling for it to be published then, so when Parliament returns next week, will you be taking any formal routes to try and force the government's hand? Well,
I think the government need to come and make a statement to the House on this issue and be held to account by MPs. They've got to publish this advice. We're being left in the dark about what it says, and that's completely unacceptable.
OK, so if Labour forms the next government, what you're saying is you'd be comfortable to routinely publish legal advice in matters like this?
Well, we need to see this legal advice. We're talking about a very, very serious situation in Gaza, 32,000 people killed, people in northern Gaza facing famine. It's incredibly important that we see this advice so that appropriate action can be taken.
Yes, you made that clear, that you want to see this legal advice, but the government says it's convention to keep legal advice in matters like this private. By you calling for it to be published, are you saying that Labour would be comfortable to publish legal advice if they were in government on issues like this?
Look, I think you have to deal with these things on a case-by-case basis, but it is important that we see this advice. We're being kept in the dark about something incredibly serious. We do need to see that. It's the government that sets the rules about arms exports, and it's important that we're transparent about whether they are meeting their own rules that they have set. And we don't know in this case because they won't publish that advice.
Well, you know that by calling for it, people will say Labour would publish the advice.
Yeah, I understand that, but in this case, it's really important that we see that advice.
The Labour group Momentum has said that more than 50 Labour MPs have demanded an end to arms sales. That's a quarter of the total number of Labour MPs. Just how divided is your party on this issue?
Look, we're not a divided party. We put down a really strong motion in Parliament calling for an immediate ceasefire, saying that any ground offensive in Rafah would be completely intolerable. The aid needs to be ramped up into Gaza, and that the hostages need to be released. We've been really clear in our position. We also want to see a two-state solution, not just as empty words, but a political reality. And I hope that's something that all MPs would get behind.
Well, civil servants overseeing arms exports to Israel have expressed some concern that they could be deemed complicit in some way in war crimes in Gaza if Israel was found to have broken international law. They're talking about wanting to stop working immediately. Do you back them in that?
I've not seen those reports or that story. But again, this is why it's so important that that legal advice is published so that we know whether the advice is that there is a risk of a breach of international humanitarian law. That's why this is so important that they publish the advice that they failed to do so.
Let me tell you a little bit more about it. It's the PCS union, and Paul O'Connor from the PCS union have said they've put our members in the firing line. They've had to carry out things that are essentially in breach of not just domestic law, but a whole raft of international obligations. So do you have some sympathy with the union?
But I want to see that advice. As I say, I've got really serious concerns about arms sales to Israel. And I think it's important that we see that advice. That's why we've been calling on the government. I don't know why they haven't published it. They need to make the position clear on this. They set the rules on arms sale, and they need to be clear about whether those their own rules might be breached in this case.
I want to ask you about William Wragg, the senior Conservative who has admitted that he gave out MPs' contact details to someone he met on a dating app. He said he was scared. He thought that the man had some compromising things on him. What do you think should happen to him now?
Well, it's a police matter now that's being investigated, and I think it's really important that investigation takes its course. I've read the reports about William Wragg, and it is very concerning in terms of MPs' safety and their numbers being given out. But anyone that's got information, I think, should go forward to the police and the parliamentary authorities so this now can be properly investigated.
Do you have any concerns that the phishing exercise could be the act of a hostile state?
Look, I think that's a possibility, but that's why it's important that there is a proper police investigation now into what has happened.
OK, well, Ellie Reeves, we will leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for coming in this morning.
Thank you.